Lenny.
Hi, Nancy.
Welcome to episode 57 of the Front Porch Book Club.
The Front Porch Book Club is a podcast that meets twice a month.
We like to dig deep into the relationship between characters and the worlds they live in.
Grab your book and iced tea and join us on the front porch.
Lenny, I am very excited to talk to you about Chief Standing Bear today. Our book this month, written by Joe Starita, is I Am a Man, Chief Standing Bear's Journey for Justice.
Well, I think our listeners who aren't familiar with the story of Chief Standing Bear are going to love hearing about this heroic man. I know I did. I didn't know anything about him.
Yeah.
You may recognize the name or not, but you're going to be dazzled by what he accomplished in improving the United States justice system.
It's amazing. When his tribe was exiled from their homeland and sent to an Oklahoma Indian reservation 2 states away, Chief Standing Bear promised his dying teenage son that he would bury him in the ancestral graveyard back along the Niobrara River in northeast Nebraska. On his journey home with his son's body, he was jailed for leaving the Oklahoma reservation and on the way back to northeast Nebraska for visiting his friends and relatives on the Omaha reservation right outside Omaha, Nebraska. The U.S. Army intended to force Chief Standing Bear to return to Oklahoma. However, a newspaperman and 2 attorneys in Omaha helped Chief Standing Bear file a suit against the U.S. government, and he ended up being the first Native person to even be allowed to testify in a U.S. court. And his case established that Native persons have the same rights as the nation's white and Black citizens. And that was actually not clear in the 1870s. It was just a muddle the way that Native Americans were treated in the U.S. justice system. So his most famous lines from his testimony in court are about his own personhood. He stood and held out his hand and said, "That hand is not the color of yours, but if I pierce it, I shall feel pain. If you pierce your hand, you also feel pain. The blood that will flow from mine will be the same color as yours. I am a man. The same God made us both."
One of the things that I like about him, his intellect and how he carried himself with some of these ways of communicating who he was to other people.
Yeah.
It's really a story about how poorly the Ponca, which was his tribe, was treated by the U.S. government. Turn and turn again. Many treaties were broken, of course, by the government, not by the Ponca. Their land and their homes and much of their farming equipment was stolen or given to other tribes. They were sent on this ridiculous forced march in all sorts of weather. I don't know, 600 miles away. Some people died along the way. I would have been one of them. I'm done marching. I'm sitting. In Oklahoma, they finally get to their destination, and they weren't even given that land. They were squatting on other people's lands, and they were dumped off in a field that was very swampy with some tents, and that was it. No equipment, no place to stay, no food, nothing. So obviously, others continued to die there as well. I personally did not know anything about Chief Standing Bear or the Ponca. It looks like this is a Nebraskan tribe.
Yeah.
So perhaps you knew something about him. I did not know anything.
I actually do know a little about Chief Standing Bear. For a number of years, there have been efforts to redress some of the wrongs and give Chief Standing Bear his due. In Lincoln, our newest high school will be called Standing Bear High School.
Oh, that's interesting.
Another exciting thing that happened recently is every state gets to put 2 statues in Statuary Hall at the U.S. Capitol building in Washington, D.C. Nebraska recently updated our 2 statues And one of our statues is now Chief Standing Bear.
Oh, wow.
I know. We were so excited. The other statue is our Pulitzer Prize winning author, Willa Cather. And she wrote My Antonia, maybe as one of her most well known books. Also, Death Comes for the Archbishop is another one people may have heard of. But Chief Standing Bear and Willa Cather stand on either side of the entrance to the Senate. They have been given
What?
very prominent places.
Wow.
He's just beautiful. I haven't seen him in person at Statuary Hall, but we now have a Chief Standing Bear statue in Lincoln as well. So that's exciting. I recently attended an opera that was written about the story of Chief Standing Bear. So I was familiar with him, of course, but I had never read I Am a Man by Joe Starita. Joe's book really is the definitive book documenting his life and his importance to U.S. jurisprudence. So I'm really happy to have now read the book, and I feel like I have a more full understanding of who he was. In Nebraska, we are trying to really showcase the importance of Chief Standing Bear and how poorly he was treated.
Wow. Now, is his tribe still there?
There are Ponca still in Nebraska. We have lots of Native Americans in Nebraska, and we have a very wonderfully activist Indian Affairs Commission in Nebraska. So, yeah, Native Americans are really a part of the fabric of Nebraska in a way that, for instance, I never really thought of them in Pennsylvania, which seems foolish of me in retrospect. For example, one of the things I learned is a lot of Native American tribes in the East Coast were moved to Great Plains reservations. And so we still have a Native American presence here in the Great Plains, but really on the East Coast, not so much.
No, we don't have any reservations over here.
Yeah.
None that I know of. We have descendants who say, when you're asked, what's your ethnicity, what's your race? Well, I'm 1/4 Native American, but that population is so low. You'll see powwows once in a while, but a lot of people come in from quite a distance.
Mm-hmm. I looked up what was the tribe in York, and it was the Susquehannock tribe, part of the Algonquin Nation. It was a tribe of between 5,000 and 7,000 people. But by 1763, okay, the United States is not even a country yet. By 1763, a bunch of them had moved west. We're talking Pittsburgh area was west at that time. So some of them moved west. A lot of them were killed by disease. And then, of course, a lot of them were murdered by the Europeans who came over. So by 1763, there were only 22 Susquehannock remaining, and they were slaughtered in Lancaster in what is now known as the Conestoga Massacre. No one was ever arrested, though everyone knew it was the so-called Paxton Boys gang who did it.
Oh my, Nancy, this is terrible.
It's terrible.
We do have a Susquehannock High School.
But you don't have any Susquehannock anymore.
My goodness. Well, I do know that we had native tribes here, Indian Echo Caves, as you remember, that we had a tribe that lived there.
Yeah.
Obviously, this area is fertile. We had native people all over the United States.
Right. So what do you think your overall feeling was after having read this book?
Well, that's a broad question.
Yeah.
I'm very impressed with the man and his people. I can't say I would have acted so honorably, but because they acted so honorably and kept the treaties, and Chief Standing Bear was so well spoken and seemed to know how to handle himself in settings that he was exposed to for the first time.
Yeah.
He had sort of a gut way of assessing the room and being able to articulate and be the person that people would listen to in that setting. So I have a lot of respect for him. The whole history of this people and how the government abused their power over them was deplorable. I mean, so the book was kind of hard for me to read at times because it was just one kick after another
Yeah.
for these people. And when I say that I probably just would have sat in the plains and just said, go without me, I'm not lying. I don't know if I have to march 600 miles and it's hailing on me and there's a blizzard. I'm just going to take my blanket and I'm just going to lay down. I don't think I have that strong of a will to survive. And there were children and old people. At 61, I'm not walking that far. But I know they didn't have that power to even say that.
The first thing they had to do, they spent all day just leaving their homes, which were lovely homes, and having to walk across the swollen river because there were no boats or anything. They made them all walk across the swollen river and carry all their stuff above their head. I mean, it was ridiculous.
You know that river was freezing cold.
Yeah, and it was freezing cold, right?
I think was Chief Standing Bear and his brother. And they said, we're not leaving.
We're not going.
No, you can say what you want. And this went on for months.
Yeah.
And they're like, we're not leaving.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're going to do, but we're not leaving. That would have been me. I'm like, I'm with you.
And it was a good thing they delayed because otherwise they would have been leaving in the middle of winter. Now, that spring was a cold, wet spring. It was hard enough, but they were going to make those people leave in February in the middle of a blizzard. And then the other aggravating thing was they could have just purchased them all steamboat ship tickets,
right,
and just steamboated them down to Oklahoma. No.
It seemed like the reasonable thing to do.
And then
kept all their stuff with them.
Little children would not have died along the way.
They would have had food.
They would not have been soaking wet and cold and starving the whole way. But they thought, well, we think we're going to try to save a little money, which they ended up not saving any money. It ended up being more money. And then they spent all of the money that had been set aside to help the Ponca establish themselves in Oklahoma Territory. So there was no money for food, farming equipment, any kind of materials for building houses. Nope. They just pretty much dropped them off there in the middle of the Oklahoma Territory, in the middle of the plains, and said, well,
with nothing. No
Good.
Seeds, no nothing.
Nope. Good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck.
I don't know, Nancy. Usually, like, government soldiers probably wouldn't be my pick for moving
families.
People.
Yeah.
These people are not military people. We got kids, we got old people. Like, they're farmers. They're not military soldiers.
Right.
They know how to plant. They know how to take care of their hogs and sheep and that kind of stuff. These people are not military. And so you have these military people. Well, we'll just walk. No, we don't just walk. No, we take the steamboat is how we do it. And then, well, we give them tents and that's good enough. No. They need to live off the land. It seems to me that this was often done through the military.
Yeah.
To get these people straight and to make them do what the government wanted them to do. And that sets a wrong tone right from the beginning.
I would say reading this book, my overall feeling was one of shame and sadness.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. That our government treated these indigenous populations so poorly. And I knew that we had, of course, but this book was very specific in illustrating all of the wrongs, like you said, done to the Ponca. It was one thing after another. As I was reading this, I kept thinking about how their land was completely stolen from them. There's just no other way to put it.
Yeah, they had their school, their homes that they built.
Yes.
They built their homes, they built their church, they built the school. It was their land. They had farmed it for generations.
Right.
They had their own cemetery.
Right. And the US government just decides, you know what? We're going to take it from them and we're going to give it to another tribe because we're trying to ingratiate ourselves into their good graces. And the Lakota didn't even want it, is
Right.
like the insult to injury. So I was thinking about how bad I would feel if I now lived on that land up in northeast Nebraska. But then I started thinking about it and I thought, well, you know what? My house probably sits on land we stole from the Pawnee through some broken treaty or another.
Right.
And it was thinking about all of that it gives me a new respect for land acknowledgments.
Mm-hmm.
I looked up the land acknowledgement we use at the University of Nebraska Lincoln often before lectures or meetings. And that land acknowledgement is the University of Nebraska is a public land grant institution with campuses and programs across the state that reside on the past, present, and future homelands of the Pawnee, Ponca, Oto, Missouri, Omaha, Dakota, Lakota, Arapaho, Cheyenne, and Kaw peoples, as well as the relocated Ho-Chunk, Winnebago, Iowa, and Sauk and Fox peoples. And then I looked at the City of Lincoln Comprehensive Plan, and it begins with a land acknowledgement. So this would be specifically where my house sits. And that land acknowledgement reads, we want to acknowledge that our community rests on the traditional lands of the Ponca, Omaha, Winnebago, Dakota, and Oto peoples, past and present, and honor with gratitude the land itself and the people who have stewarded it through generations. This calls us to commit to work in partnership with our Indigenous peoples, continuing to learn how to be better stewards of the land we now inhabit as well.
Mm.
So I do like those land acknowledgements.
I do like those land acknowledgements too, Nancy. That's very interesting. And with you being in Lincoln, is there a Native American culture in your city?
Yes,
Oh,
absolutely.
okay. Now, this is not a part of my culture, so I could be blind to it. There might be things going on that I just don't know about. I just know that there's a man in my church that identifies as partially Native American, and he does do some powwows.
Mm-hmm. It definitely made me feel that I am more blind to not only understanding what happened to Native Americans in the past, but also currently. I feel like I am not as knowledgeable about current day issues and what's happening with the tribes here in Nebraska.
Hmm.
I did find a very nice resource that it's a map that you can find out which native peoples lived anywhere in the US or even the world if people are interested in knowing who the indigenous people were. And you can also search for treaties and languages at this site. So it's a website, https://native-land.ca/.
I like that. You can put that on our website, Nance.
I will. I'll add that link to our show notes for sure.
Well, shall we get back to Chief Standing Bear?
Let's.
They had no rights.
They had no rights. They weren't even considered people, Linda.
I guess if I would have thought, I don't think maybe I never even put that question to myself, but they had no rights. They really weren't considered people per se. I don't know how you cannot say they're people. The people that were helping the Ponca had to start with saying, well, wait a minute, do they have rights in our government? If so, what are the rights? Do they have a right to even speak in court?
Right.
We now have gone through the Civil War. We have, at this point, freed the slaves, but we didn't do anything about the native tribes and the native, or I guess they just said the Indians.
Yeah.
What we were going to do with them. So the people that surrounded themselves with this Ponca tribe really had to start with where do we start with this? And this was kind of complicated because you're writing new law. You're going to the Constitution and you're fighting against the Constitution to give those people some rights.
And you're fighting against case law. So, for instance, the defense, the U.S. government, were arguing using the Dred Scott case, saying that Dred Scott, the enslaved person, had no rights. And they said, well, if it's the case for enslaved people, even though we now no longer have enslaved people in the United States because the Civil War is over, we can still apply this to Native Americans.
Right. So while they're doing all of this stuff in court, the Ponca are still living in tents down by some stream in Oklahoma.
The sequence of events is Chief Standing Bear's teenage son dies at the very end of that year, so the end of December. So they set off in January and decide. Chief Standing Bear says he's going to honor his promise to bury his son in their ancestral homelands. So they walk all the way back from Oklahoma, and they get as far as Omaha, where they have friends and relatives in the Omaha tribe. Then he's arrested, and they want to force him to walk back to Oklahoma. It was a really smart newspaper man who starts to write articles about, look, this chief has been unjustly imprisoned and he's being kept in jail for really no reason. He has done nothing illegal, and they're trying to force him to go back to Oklahoma. And then he talks to his friend who's an attorney, and the attorney is trying to figure out, well, how can I help? And strangely enough, it's Brigadier General Crook, who is the highest ranking military official in a whole huge multi-state area, the area of the Platte, who says, if you can establish a writ of habeas corpus that will keep the military, including himself, from sending him back to Oklahoma, because people have the right to appear in court to defend themselves. So the two attorneys agree they're going to take this case. Chief Standing Bear is going to sue the U.S. government, and they're going to represent him. So that case was the famous case where he's holding out his hand. He says, I am a man, even though you people don't seem to think I am and that I have no rights, but I am a man. He wins the case, which is great. We've now established that Indigenous people are human beings, and the government can't force Native Americans to go wherever the government thinks they need to go and to keep them from going where they want to go. But the Ponca still don't own their homeland. The Lakota still own it, even though they don't want it. And so that speaking tour was to raise money partially so they could buy back their homelands.
Which they didn't get any money from. It's not the U.S. government came in and said, you're moving, here's some money for your land.
No.
They stole that.
Yeah, they stole it.
And now they all of a sudden have to buy the land that they had and all their homes and things on it.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
This whole journey. I have to ask you, Nancy, at one point he is on his speaking tour raising awareness for his tribe, and he cuts his hair.
Mm-hmm.
What were your thoughts on that?
That's an interesting question. I actually had no thoughts except that it was something that he had wanted to do for a while. And his niece and the newspaper man had kind of talked him out of it because they felt like people were expecting Chief Standing Bear and they had certain ideas of what a Great Plains chief would look like, including having long, dark hair. I guess I thought, well, good for him. If he wanted to cut his hair, I don't know. What did you think?
I had mixed emotions on it, to be honestly. I was kind of saddened by it.
Yeah.
But I think if I would have known why he wanted to do it, and I don't know that that was clear in the book, was he trying to be more presentable to the white people? Was he trying to assimilate? Because part of his strategy here, and that was the part that still made me sad, is that he said, well, I'm not the chief. We're assimilating into the white culture. And I know that he had a tough hand to play. I think his tribe still did consider him the chief.
I think so, yeah.
And I think he was saying that so for political reasons, and I don't have any problem with that. I still want to know more about, why did he cut his hair? Did he feel that he would be more presentable? Did he think, well, people will accept me better as, see, I am a man, I am assimilating into the white culture like you people want me to.
Yeah.
I'm not what was the word that they used, Nancy? It was horrible.
Savage?
A savage. Yes, I'm not
Yeah.
a savage. And did he feel that he had to sell out some of that? And that's why he did that. That's what part made me sad. Now, if you want your hair short because it's just too long and it's too hot, okay, that's one thing. I can buy that, you know. I don't have real long hair, but we both had really long hair back in the day. And it does get tangled and it's a lot of work. So that's one thing. I guess I just would have wanted some more information, because that part of the book did make me sad a little bit when I heard, like, well, see, I'm not really the chief.
Let's ask the author, Joe Starita, that.
Okay.
In the next episode.
Yeah, I just felt like he had to package his message so that it would be swallowable to the courts.
Yeah.
I just thought, oh, he cut all that hair off. I'm sure it was beautiful, you know. I do want to talk about White Buffalo Girl, Nance. Will we get too sad?
It's very sad. So she was the first Ponca tribe member who died on their journey from the Niobrara to Oklahoma. And it was just 3 days into their journey. She was a little baby. She's just an infant little baby girl. And they had only made it to Neely, Nebraska, which is basically northeast Nebraska. They had 3 days of walking, crossing swollen rivers, tromping across muddy land. If they'd made it 30 miles, that would be amazing. So the dad, Black Elk, of course, did not want to leave his baby girl. Especially the Ponca really have the feeling that they want to be near their deceased tribe members. Like, that's an important cultural thing for them. So the thought of leaving his baby girl, of course, was heartbreaking, as it would be. He said, I don't know if I will ever even return to this land. So he asked the townspeople to care for her grave in his absence. And so what Joe Starita writes about the town people's promise is, for more than 125 years, the citizens of Neely and surrounding communities have kept fresh flowers on the grave. No one really knows where they come from, only that they are always there, week after week, month after month, year after year. Yeah. But I'm glad the townspeople are taking care of her grave.
Yeah. When you hear stories like that, it does give you hope, some hope for humanity.
Yeah.
That there are good people out there.
Right.
And that was just one little girl that died.
Yeah.
So many people died.
Right.
Wouldn't you just want to crawl in the hole after them?
Yes, that's exactly it.
Yeah.
I'd say, you know what? I'm just going to stay right here with my baby.
Yeah.
You guys go on.
You guys do what you need to do, but
right.
I'm done.
Right. So there were some good people, like the attorneys were good people.
Yes.
The newspaperman Tibbles, he was a good person. But there were some really awful people. And I am going to raise up U.S. Indian Inspector Kemble as the prototypical bad dude who was constantly lying to the Ponca, lying about the Ponca, lying to anyone who asked for any information about what was going on with the Ponca. He kept insisting they want to go to Oklahoma. They want to give their land to the Lakota. They have been given food and everything they need to set up new homes. And if they are not flourishing in the choicest land available in the entire Great Plains, well, that's due to them because they have been given every advantage. Even at the trial, he was lying about
Through his teeth.
pretty much about everything.
Yeah.
He was a bad dude. On the other hand, there was the Brigadier General Crook, who actually the lawsuit is Chief Standing Bear versus General Crook. So he was the U.S. government official that the lawsuit was against. He was the highest ranking Army officer in the region. And he was ultimately responsible for sending Chief Standing Bear back to Oklahoma. But of course, then, as I mentioned, Crook was by then pretty unhappy about the treatment of the Ponca, and he kept trying to convince his superiors to honor their treaties. And if they weren't going to honor the treaty, then to help these people out. And so it was Crook who came up with the idea of filing a writ of habeas corpus. After Crook so-called loses the lawsuit, which he wanted to lose, he ended up becoming a very good friend and advocate for the Ponca. And it was really nice to see that evolution in him, his changing ideas of his responsibility as a military person, his responsibility as a human being, and what was going on with this indigenous population.
Yeah, interesting arc for him because he definitely is one of these army people.
Yeah, he definitely is.
Okay, here's the orders. This is when I gotta go. These people are moving.
Yeah.
To being a friend to them and looking after them and wanting what's best for the people. So I did like his story. I was glad that his history was included in the book.
Do you want to talk about Big Snake, who was murdered?
Oh, no. Okay, Nancy, I just cried over little buffalo girl, little white buffalo girl. Now we have to talk. Now we have to talk about Big Snake.
Yep.
Now, this is brother to
Yep.
Chief Standing Bear. Big Snake stays in Oklahoma with the people that are there after they march all those hundreds of miles. And he is arrested.
Trumped up charges.
You got that right.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, the guy does nothing and he's killed. To make a long, horrible
murdered
story. Yes.
Surrounded by like 29 military people. And he's just sitting there. He's like,
no weapon on him at all. They murdered him.
You have to go. He's like, I'm not going anywhere. You have to go. No, I am not going anywhere.
I'm not moving one more step.
No.
And I can see me saying that. I'm done moving. I'm sitting. But anyway, they killed him. Was that at that camp that you and I went to visit?
No.
Okay. Because when I was reading that, I thought, I wonder if this is where we stayed that one night. Oh.
So what you're thinking about, Lenny, is we were visiting Fort Robinson, Nebraska, up in the northwest corner of Nebraska. Who was murdered there was Crazy Horse.
Oh, okay.
The Oglala Sioux leader. He is bayoneted by a U.S. soldier after resisting confinement in a guardhouse. Also basically murdered.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's what I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he did make, he was in the book, I think. I remember reading a little bit about him in the book that we had.
So that was in 1877.
Around the same time frame as Big Snake here.
And he had surrendered to U.S. troops under who? General George Crook. And 4 months later, he was fatally wounded.
Yeah.
The Native Americans, they really had no rights and there was no justice. They had no recourse. Terrible things were perpetrated upon them, and there was really very little redress that they had.
Right. And somehow Chief Standing Bear had the persona the way about him and the people, that people were willing to listen to him.
I think the thing about Chief Standing Bear is that he was so persistent. His story never changed. And in a really good way, he was just stubborn. People would be lying, trying to get him to change his story. He never changed his story. He was like, no, we did not want to leave our homelands. Every time someone asked him, oh, but you signed this paper, or Kimball said this, or no, we did not want to leave our homelands. I mean, he just never changed his story. He never stopped stating the truth.
That helped. I think people identified with, my son died and I want to bury him.
Yes.
And I want to bury him where my people are buried. And I don't think we have that same culture from a European thing, but I think people appreciate that and understand, if that's important to you, that yes, you would take your son's body and you would walk all these hundreds of miles back if it was that important to you, and want to bury them among your people.
Yeah.
I think he even said how many white people would do that. Well, none of us probably, but it was important to him.
Chief Standing Bear didn't say that, but Tibbles, the newspaper man,
Right.
said, look, who among us would walk in miserable conditions hundreds of miles to bury our son? And this is a promise he's made that he's keeping. How can you not say that this is a human being,
Right,
who deserves justice, who deserves our kindness, who we should not be taking advantage of, but should be defending who he is and what he stands for?
Yeah, and that kind of noble character of I promised him this and I'm going to do this. Then I promised the white people, I promised the government, treaty after treaty. We have not broken our promise, but you have broken the treaties. We've said this, we have abided by this, and this is what you have done to us.
I think integrity is a really good word.
Oh, there you go. Integrity. Yeah.
You used it first. Just to...
Oh, okay. No wonder it sounded like a good word.
But I think you've hit the nail on the head. He was a man of great integrity. And I think people saw that.
Yeah, that they wasn't lying to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that this is really what happened to his people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, boy, Nance. All right. Well, we're going to talk on our next episode with the author, Joe Starita, about Chief Standing Bear some more, to gain some insights that he has. The book is well researched. It doesn't take you long to go, okay, we're talking about some real documents here.
Yeah.
He's got it all laid out. The treatment of the Native Americans and steps forward towards healing. So I'm really excited to hear what his additional thoughts are on this.
Yeah, we're really fortunate that he's able to join us. I hope that you, our listener, have enjoyed our discussion about I Am a Man by Joe Starita. Thanks for listening. Our website is frontporchbookclub.com.
Our episodes come out twice a month on the first and third Wednesdays of each month.
I think this episode is probably going to be dropped a little early since the 4th of July is coming up and I'm going to be on the road.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Well, that'll be great.
Yeah. So I think this one will be a little early. But in any event, it will be available certainly by the first Wednesday of July.
Okay, Nancy. Well, we'll see you later.
Sounds good. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.